Alright guys, so we're back for this part 2 of this live play review. So let's get into the action. So yeah, so here we have two limpers. I would try to isolate a bit bigger, something like 6 big blind I think is fine. So he went to 6, I like it. Not the best of boards. So again, like we mentioned previously, being out of position, multi-way sucks. Being in the big pot out of position sucks, especially on these type of boards where like the equities will shift like quite a bit on a lot of turns. I mean, there's like Queen X, Jack X, 7X, 6X, or Spade like will not be amazing. I mean, not for our particular hand, but I mean for our range in general. If we're holding a hand like aces, for example, and all that type of stuff. So just try to keep control of the size of the pot, I think is a fine strategy here. They both can have strong hands here, so I like the check. This is pretty gross. Like, like one good thing would have been if this guy jammed here. Now we're like in a really tough spot. To be honest, this is a really tough spot. If I had kings, I would probably fold. With queens, given the fact that, I mean, it just grows, to be honest. Like, I'm unsure. It's one of these spots where I have to think about. So he's playing, we have only 7 hands. He's playing 43-14. So he's really loose passive, right? So loose passive guys usually tend to want to be just checking and seeing turns. Once they start being this aggressive with these sizings against two players, like he's gonna have plenty of 2 pairs, he's gonna have plenty of straights, and then if he's bluffing and he has a hand like ace-7 of spades, I mean, or ace-jack of spades or something like that, I mean, like he just has a ton of equity against your hand. So all in all, I think probably folding is the best here, I would say. But again, like this is one of these spots where it's super, super interesting. And like, to be honest, I'm still not quite sure. But I think that in-game folding is the right approach. We're dead. We're close to dead against his value range. Plus, if he's bluffing, he can have like quite a bit of equity here. Even calling here, like, to be honest, is not attractive because now this is the turn, right? The pot is like huge, and I mean huge. I mean in a sense. I mean there's only a pot size bet left. But now what do? Like we just fold. Like it's quite gross. I think just folding the flop, like as gross as it is, it might be the right approach. But yeah, I'm unsure about this one. Hopefully he just checks, but I don't think, like, once he starts betting this big on the flop, like, I don't expect him to slow down on the turn. Yeah, I think, like, the flop call, like, I think if we decide to go with it, we just go with it. Just because, like the problem here is that we're out of position, okay? And he makes a pot size bet. So he makes a huge bet. So calling is not attractive here. Like calling is not attractive because we have to call a really big bet when there's going to be many, many turns that we will absolutely hate. Like any king, any ace, any spade, any 7, any 6 were not great, right? Plus, even if those turn doesn't come and it's like a pure blank, he can still have us drawing dead, basically, because he can have the straights or a set or something like that where we're drawing pretty thin. So all in all, if we ever decide to go with the hand, I would probably just jam here. But again, I mean, I'm quite unsure here. Like calling is super gross. Jamming is gross, so I think folding is the right option. Now let's take a look here. What happens in this hand? Let me just go back. But super interesting hand nonetheless. So we're going to be opening Jack 9 off. $2.5. And he calls again. This is a board where I think we can be pretty aggressive. If the board is more like high, so like if the paired card is more middling, like 7-7x, 8-8x, 9-9x, where he can have the offsuit versions of the trips combos. So like if the board is like 8-8x, he's gonna have like, or 9-9x, he can have like Queen 9 off, Jack 9 off, King 9 off, Ace 9 off. So you can have like a lot of trips. When it's like 5-5x, like yes, you can have like 5-3 suited, but that's only 2 combos. Yes, you can have potentially Ace 5 offsuit, but that should get folded sometimes, like sometimes pre-flop as well. So he's not gonna have King 5 off, Queen 5 off type of stuff. So it's only mostly the suited versions, which makes it a lot less likely that he's gonna have trips. So like we have to be a bit more careful on those middling boards where it's like 7-7x, 8-8x, 9-9x, where you can have much more trips. On the lower paired boards, we can still be pretty aggressive here. So all that to say, I would just c-bet here pretty aggressively with a small size. So I do think that like this is something that he could work on, start doing more betting. What I suspect here is he was kind of into this particular hand, right? So he didn't really pay attention here, which happens, right? I mean, if you're playing a bit pot on another table, you might miss like a c-betting spot on a certain table, which is totally fine, because I mean, this spot will definitely yield a higher EV than a small single raise spot that, I mean, you have pretty much nothing, right? So now it goes check, 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 and then he bets the river. Now it's a pretty easy fold. Ace 10 off, we should be opening. We're gonna be folding. I like the fact that he took a look at the stats. This is a standard fold, but I mean, if he's a weaker player or a very loose player and we want to isolate him and play pots against this guy, we can adjust by 3-betting him slightly more. I mean, ace 10 off is on the loose side, but again, like I like the fact that he took the time to take a look into the stats, which I think is a good habit to do. 6-8 off, we're just going to be checking here. Pretty nice spot here. So now, I mean, the only option we have is that we're never calling. We're going to be cold 4-betting only. So now, what we want to be cold 4-betting here basically is that, first of all, take a look in the positions, right? So he's 3-betting cutoff versus under the gun. So his range going to be a bit stronger, right, than if it's like button versus cutoff. So we cannot go crazy here. I would probably cold 4-bet a hand, like bottom of my range would probably be jacks plus and ace queen suited plus, like a very tight range, just because of the fact that I think that these range are a bit stronger on average. And yeah, I mean, you want some strong hands to be playing against these. So, and we're only going to be cold 4-betting. So something like jacks plus, ace queen suited plus. We can mix in some ace jack suited. But again, with the positions, I would just stick with the pretty solid range that I would play, and just something like jacks plus and ace queen suited plus. And then I would 4-bet something like, I think that's a bit too big. Now you kind of give him like, it's kind of like, I tend to make it a bit bigger when out of position, but going something like 22.5 I think is fine. I think 25 is a bit too big here. I don't think it's a huge mistake. So we get 2 folds. Here it was a limp pot, and then he check called with a gut shot, which I think is against a half pot size bet. I think it's okay. I mean, we had a gut shot to the nuts. King 10 suited, pretty standard open. Ace Queen, we're not gonna be folding, so pretty easy 3-bet here. He's playing on the tighter side, it seems, like 17-15 over 286 hands. So that means the sample is quite a bit more relevant. He's opening 16% under the gun, so I mean it's on the tighter side, but not too crazy tight. Like his stats were really tight from the other positions. Queen 8 off. I mean, it's a hand that is borderline. We want to be opening against the overfolders. We don't have those stats. I mean, he's playing 2017 over 900 hands, so he seems a bit on the tighter side, which I don't mind opening. But you definitely need to have those blind versus blind fold to steal stats in your HUD, not in the pop-up, like directly in your HUD. I think it's super important. Ten 4 suited, we could open if it folded to us. I wouldn't mind opening a bit wider on the button at these stakes. Let me just grab some water. Here against a 3-bet 5, we could definitely 3-bet here. Now, I mean, I think our option is to 3-bet. I mean, we could don't really like calling, to be honest, with this hand. Pretty interesting situation. I think, like, if the small blind doesn't call, I think it's really like a 3-bet or fold spot. Now that he calls, I think we can start having a calling range too. So I think this hand fits pretty well into that, in the fact that, I mean, we're gonna flop, like we can flop really strong, or just like, even if we had top pair, we're just gonna put any more money into the pot unless we improve. But so yeah, so I wouldn't mind just calling. I think this guy's gonna get along pretty often, and we have a pretty nice hand to play multi-way. If this guy would not have called, then I would only play 3-bet or fold. I mean, not only play 3-bet or fold, but with this specific hand, I think is a bit too weak to call. Jack 10 off from the cutoff. We're going to be opening if it gets folded to us. Five 3 suited to fold. Pocket sixes, if he opens, we're going to be 3-betting. If it gets folded to us, we're going to be opening. 10-9 suited, we're going to be opening. So again, like I mentioned here on the right, it's a spot where we're not going to be doing a ton of c-betting. I mean, even though his range doesn't contain the top part of the really strong hands, I mean, you still have decent equity, especially on that type of board. So checking these type of hands like this, that we can pretty much call any turn card, is great. And I mean, even betting is fine, but I think checking is fine as well. If I were to bet, I would probably bet slightly bigger, not go crazy big, but just slightly bigger than half pot. Queen 10 off, standard called versus 2.5. So here, I think it's a interesting situation. Like, again, like in the previous hand, we had a suited ace, which plays really well multi-way, right? Because we can like flop some nut flush draws, which has a lot of equity, or if we flop a flush or turn a flush, we're always gonna have the nut flush. Those offsuit broadways here are terrible multi-way because we're often dominated, and once we are dominated, we have very little equity to improve. So those offsuit broadways plays really bad out of position and plays really bad multi-way. So in this specific situation, I would either squeeze or just fold here. Probably like king queen off, I would probably always squeeze, and then king jack off, I mean, is close. I think at some low frequency is fine, but yeah. So I think calling here is not the right approach. Like I would much rather call hands. Like, you want to be calling hands that have not making potential, like suited ace-x or pocket pair that you flop a set or something like that. Here, once you flop top pair, I mean, it's always going to be like when a lot of money goes into the pot, you're always screwed. And then when you're behind, you have little to improve. So here we called king queen 10 off from the big blind. EC bet, I'm not sure what size. I think it was 2 big blinds. Let me just check. So he opens 2.5, we call. And then EC bets 2 big blind. So, I mean, here we have the option to actually check call or check raise. The combos of having like clubs. So if we have queen 10 off with a club, I think, or with the queen of club, I would start by check raising that. These combos we can mix in between call and check raise. I think both options are fine. I would tend to check raise a bit more like with the club in my hand. So here, I mean, it's a spot where it's actually very close. If you went, like, I don't like his sizing on the turn. It's a turn where he should be really polarized. He should not be betting Jack X here, not often. And then his value range by betting small on the flop wants to get value back on the turn. So just using a more polarized strategy on the turn and betting really big makes a lot of sense. Plus the fact if he has a hand like king 10, king queen, ace king type of stuff, or even better, right? Like there's 2 flush draws out there. There's going to be plenty of rivers that he cannot just value bet anymore. So basically just getting that value on the turn is really, really important. So yeah, against an overbet, like I think this is a fold. Like it depends on the sizing, but against like a 2/3 pot, I don't think we can fold queen 10 with the open ender here. It's not a great spot, but yeah, given that sizing, I don't think we can fold. Also, what I want to say is that we have the option to also check raise, but check raising on that specific turn doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. We're gonna have hands like 4s that we see bet with a club. That makes sense. Hands like 3-4 suited. That's 2 combos. Maybe king 4 suited. Jack 4 suited. But again, like Jack 4, do you want to be really check raising Jack 4? Maybe king 4. We have some pocket 4s as well. But it's not a super great turn that we just want to be piling the money in here. So I think just check calling is fine. Check raising at some frequency with the spade is fine as well, because we can check raise here, and then like on a spade run out, we can definitely have some bluffs. Yeah, I think here, even though we banked, I think like this is a mistake here. like this guy bets into 3 players, right? So he only bets half pot, right? But I mean, this guy calls, so they obviously have an ace or like a flush draw or something like that. So here, I mean, we have like we don't even have an heart. So if we want to be calling, like I would prefer calling a hand like potentially like a gut shot to the nuts or something like that. But here, I mean, I would just fold. It's pretty obvious that one of these guys has an ace. We're out of position and the pot is already pretty big. But when you know that you're going to bing the turn, I mean, you can always call. So it goes check, check quite fast. People like those guys can definitely have a hand like ace 10, ace jack of diamonds, so with the backdoor flush. I don't expect an ace to be betting, so I would try to bet myself, and I would try to bet the sizing that would still get called by ace-x. So I would probably bet something like 18 bigs. Also, I don't expect people to be bluffing here, so checking I don't think makes a whole lot of sense. And then he bets small. Like, I'm not folding here. I think it's a pretty easy call. I think raising here is overplaying our hand. He can definitely have some flushes. He can have hands like queens. He can already have a boat, right? That he just checked back the turn. What are you getting called by? Do you really expect to get called by ace 10? I think that's pretty optimistic. I think it's just a, like if we were to raise, like we could potentially raise like 28 bigs or something like that. But I think that's overplaying our actual hand. Like now, what if we get jammed on? He actually tanks, which, yeah, I mean, like, not sure what he had. But the problem is, like, what are we getting called by that we beat? I mean, not much. So here we actually check raise the turn, which I kind of like with the spade here. Once we are facing a bigger bet size, calling is less attractive, right? But given the fact that he actually went 2/3 spot, I think calling is fine. And also check raising is fine, especially with a spade, but he actually jammed, so we cannot call here. So I kind of like this play at some frequency. But I also think that calling is an option given the fact that he went with a smallish size on the turn there. King 10 off, we're going to be opening, but we don't because button opens. Six, eight suited, we're probably going to be defending. Against 2.75, I think we can still call here. 6, 8 suited against a likely, I mean, he's green is weak player, so I think that's a pretty standard call there, even though he makes it a pretty slightly bigger size. Sorry about that. All right, let's continue the footage for another 14 minutes. 14. I'm not sure why I said exactly 14, but about 15 minutes more. Pocket tens we're definitely going to be playing. We're definitely going to be 3-betting against this guy. So here we get 3-bet. Pocket tens is a hand that is mostly going to be a pure call against his 3-bet. Now it's a pure fold. Pocket deuces, we're just going to fold 2 versus a squeeze. Kind of sucks, but it is what it is. Six nine suited, we can open if everybody folds to us, which happens. Pocket kings, pretty nice hand. Hopefully we get some action. There's a lot of limping going on at 16-0. That's pretty nice. Okay, this is great. Something like 15.5 bigs, I think is fine. Something like that is fine. Pocket threes is pretty much going to be always a fold there. Okay, so this is a great board. Shouldn't have that many 9x. We block some king 9 suited that he can have with the diamond. So we block 3 combos of king 9 suited. He's going to have plenty of low pocket pairs. We should still be betting this aggressively. Pretty good board. Also, he's a bit short stack. So if I had a hand like, for example, like queens, I would probably end up jamming there. With having kings or aces, I mean, just calling is fine. There's no flush draw. The board is rainbow. We're not as scared of overcards. If we have pocket jacks, I would probably just get it in on the flop. But we're not folding turn jams here. So also, like, this is something that, like, it was like there's a big pot going on here, you know, like almost a 200 big blind pot, and he's just like, oh, I want to be like labeling this guy. Like, we don't really care about this guy. Make sure that you're here because this is the really important situation, and you want to be putting most of your focus there, you know, because this will have an impact. I mean, this guy is gonna be like, you already know he's a recreational with the stack size he has. But yeah. Ace 10. Nice. Nice hand. So he clicks it out next big blind. Here it's definitely going to be a 3-bet. I would 3-bet slightly bigger, maybe something like 9.5. It's also pretty concerning that, I mean, he's playing 46. I'm not sure what the second number he is, but only 80 hands. So he looks like really, really loose passive. Again, like that would not stop me from 3-betting pocket nines. But if I do see some further action or further aggression, I would proceed very carefully. King Jack suited, pretty standard, very standard open. I'm not really gonna elaborate on those type of plays. So I think he lagged or something. He calls. Okay, let me just check. Let me pause it. Try it back. King deuce suited, we're definitely going to be playing. Mostly going to be a call. I mean, against a 2x open, we have to defend super wide, like very, very wide. Not sure we have to fold, like pretty much any hand, like really, really the bottom hands. Didn't see what happened here. Let me just go back. Okay, so E open, we have a7 off, easy call. We can 3-bet sometimes as well. Mixing in those offsuit ace-x is fine. He bets small. I don't mind the sizing on this board. Like he's out of position, wants to control the size of the pot. There's going to be plenty of turns that's not great. So just keeping the size of the pot a bit more under control makes a lot of sense here. But I mean, he can use different strategies. He could go with like a big bet or a small bet or whatever. So I mean, with our hand, we could decide to raise the flop sometimes with the ace of heart and then the bottom pair as well, and start turning this hand into a bluff on different runouts. I think that would be fine. Calling is also fine. Against a check, make sure you doesn't snap check back, which like if you had like a pretty strong hand, you would need to be thinking about it. Or if you had like a bluffing hand, you know, you had a hand like king 9, you would have to think about it. You know, like do I bluff or do I not bluff? What type of hands do you want to be turning into a bluff? That type of stuff. So make sure that like with your timings, you don't necessarily give that away, because once he checks here and you snap check back, like you're pretty much saying, hey, I have a very easy hand that wants to get to showdown, and then that hand is easy to play, exactly like this. Then just a standard check back here. We have some showdown value. No need to be turning into a bluff. Let's go for another 10 minutes. King 7, like really close one. We should be taking a look into the big blind if we want to be opening. So we see a cold caller here. Again, we have top pair, top kicker with the ace of club. Against these guys, we want to be playing a bit more face up. So you want to be betting a certain size that your hand wants to be betting. So in this instance, like we have a very strong hand. We want to be like building a pot, right? But he only has 40 big. So it's not like we want to go with a like really big bet size with a pot or something like that. Just going with like a 2/3 spot, it is totally fine here. We can have plenty of like we can pretty much put all the money in very easily on turn and river, so we don't need to go crazy big here. We still want to be keeping him in the pot, but I wouldn't go 1/3 here. Maybe like half pot or 2/3 is fine. I don't think going 1/3 is also a mistake, because we have such a strong hand. Pocket fives, pretty easy open. Big blind's playing 25-15. King queen off, we're pretty much only going to be calling there in these positions. Against the smaller size, we can do both. Having the king of club is important. So like with the king of club, I would tend to check raise a bit more than without. If he went with a bigger bet size here, I would mostly call. And then against this sizing, I think we can do both options, calling or raising. On the turn here, I think we're going to be really polarized. We're going to have hands like ace queen, right, that we will be check raising, and we're going to have to. We're going to have ace queen off in our range. So I would probably use a very polarized sizing here with something like an overbet. And we're going to have plenty of stuff. We're going to have like 8-10 suited. We're going to have two pairs. We're going to have sets, that type of stuff. So I would be a bit more polarized when betting the turn here. It's not like we want to be like betting a whole, like a whole lot of top pair type of stuff. So even betting a hand like ace queen with a really big bet, I think is fine. But this hand, I would probably end up checking here. Because like if you have, let's say, pocket nines, if you have king 10, like you want to be piling the money in on the turn here. You cannot make it huge, right? Because I mean, there's gonna be plenty of rivers that you're not gonna like. But again, like I would be using like a more polarized strategy here than betting something like 75%. I would probably bet something towards like 20 bigs or something like that. And yeah, I mean, we can still like bet comfortably. Not comfortably, but we can still bet hands like ace queen for like 19 bigs or something like that. Yeah, I think this sizing doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Like it's basically saying, hey, I have a pretty strong hand, but not great hand. I still want to be betting, don't want to be checking, so I'm betting this size. But most of your range, I think, wants to be betting on the bigger size, on the bigger side, just because it's going to be a bit more polarized. And also, you can always have that. So just, I think, checking the turn. I think the check raise on the flop is fine. But these type of hands, it's not like you can get 3 streets of value anyway. So just check raise, check call turn. Or it goes check, check. Then you can bet the river or something like that. I think it's a fine strategy. Let's do a couple more hands. So yeah, against this recreational, we're definitely going to be 3-betting. And then this guy cold calls, which should not happen. We have a really good board. I'm never folding on that board. Yes, he can have nines. Yes, he can have ace king sometimes. These guys like a 47-10. But I would just bet flop, bet turn, jam river on clean runouts. And then let's wrap it up after this hand. Hopefully it just doesn't go bet fold. It does. So all right, let's take a look at like one last interesting spot and we can wrap it up. Yeah, against the 3x, against the recursional, it's a pretty easy call. We can also sometimes 3-bet at this stack depth, but he makes it pretty, like he makes it 3x pre-flop. Pretty easy call here. I mean, we don't have backdoor flush draw. We can turn some hands like 5-6 into a bluff that have a bit higher equity. He seems on the more aggressive side, 41-31 over 149 hands. I would still call the turn. We have a gut shot. Plus, there's 2 flush draws. He can be bluffing. And yeah, I think he played this hand fine. So we're going to wrap things up right now. So I think he played pretty solidly here. We see a couple of mistakes here and there, which is totally fine. We saw that the games look really, really good. There were a lot of recreational players, a lot of weaker players, a lot of cold calling and a lot of limping going on. So I think all in all, Kacper, you did a pretty nice job. If you guys have any questions about this Leakfinder, just hit me up in the forum. I'll be more than happy to cover any questions that you guys had. So other than that, I'm going to wish you guys luck.